Victory does not belong to the strongest. It belongs to the most prepared. Every battle is won before it begins, not by brute force, but by foresight. In war and in life, the one who thinks 5 moves ahead commands the battlefield. The careless act. The wise anticipate. The future is not given. It is constructed, move by move, thought by thought. To master strategy, you must master yourself. You must learn to see what others miss, to act before others react. Subscribe to our channel. If you're ready to master your mind, and tell us, where are you watching from? In the depths of strategy, there exists a truth that few have grasped. Power, true power, moves like wind through leaves, unseen, unfelt, until it changes everything. I am Sun Tzu, and today I will teach you the art of invisible war. Most believe warfare is about strength, about armies clashing on blood-soaked fields, about the thunder of hooves and the clash of steel. They are blind to the deeper truth. The greatest battles are fought in silence. The most decisive victories are won before the enemy knows they are at war. This is the first principle of mastery. True power remains invisible until the moment of triumph. Consider the spider. It does not announce its web. It does not boast of its strategy. It weaves in silence, creates in darkness, and strikes only when victory is assured. This is how you must think. This is how you must move. But you resist this truth. You want to show your strength, to prove your worth, to announce your intentions. This is the thinking of the amateur, of the defeated, of those who will never truly understand power. The master knows. Every display of strength reveals a weakness. Every boast creates a vulnerability. Every announcement gives your opponents time to prepare. Instead, learn to move like shadow across water, to influence without force, to shape events so subtly that others believe they chose their own defeat. For months before the battle, we worked in silence. We spread rumors of our weakness. We appeared disorganized. We let spies see what we wanted them to see. While they grew confident, we grew strong. While they celebrated future victory, we prepared their defeat. This is not deception for deception's sake. This is the highest form of strategy, the art of winning without apparent effort, of conquering without visible conquest. Think now of your own battles, your struggles, your ambitions. How many times have you announced your intentions only to face resistance? How often have you shown your strength only to find it turned against you? The path of invisible warfare demands discipline, patience, the wisdom to know that true power needs no display, no validation, no recognition until the moment of its ultimate expression. Remember, the lightning strike is not the source of its power. It is merely the final expression of forces gathering invisibly in the clouds above. Your strategy must be the same. In the chapters that follow, I will show you how to gather your forces, how to move unseen, how to strike with such precision that victory is assured before you begin. But first, you must embrace this fundamental truth. The art of invisible war is not about hiding. It is about understanding that the most powerful forces in the universe are those we cannot see until they change everything. Are you ready to learn the art of invisible warfare, to master the forces that shape destiny itself? Then listen carefully, for what I am about to teach you has toppled empires and raised kingdoms from dust. The first lesson begins now, and like all true power, it will be invisible until it transforms your life completely. The fool sees the battlefield only when he stands upon it. The master shapes it long before he arrives. Watch closely now, for I will reveal to you one of the most crucial principles of strategic thinking, the art of preparation. When a general leads his army into battle without preparing the ground, he has already accepted defeat. When a warrior draws his sword without understanding the terrain, he fights not his enemy, but his own ignorance. But I speak not just of war. Every arena of life is a battlefield, every goal a territory to be conquered, every challenge an enemy to be overcome. Let me tell you of a battle I once won. before a single arrow flew. Our enemies had chosen the ground, a vast plain between two rivers. They believed the terrain favored their superior cavalry. They were right, but they failed to see beyond the obvious. For 3 months before the battle, we diverted streams upstream. We planted crops in strategic locations. We spread rumors among the local villages, each action invisible, each step seemingly unconnected. But together they formed a web of influence that would determine the outcome before the first warrior stepped onto the field. When the day of battle arrived, the plain had become a maze of muddy channels. Their cavalry, their greatest strength, became their greatest weakness. The crops we had planted provided cover for our archers. The locals, influenced by our carefully placed rumors, provided them with false intelligence. They lost the battle the moment they chose the field, because we had already shaped it to our advantage. Here is what the masses fail to understand. Preparation is not merely about gathering resources or honing skills. It is about creating conditions so favorable that victory becomes inevitable. Think of water flowing downhill. It does not fight gravity. It does not struggle against the earth. It follows the path of least resistance, a path it has carved over. Time, patiently, persistently, until the very landscape guides it to its destination. This is how you must think. This is how you must prepare. Before you enter any arena, ask yourself, what forces are at play? What currents shape this battlefield? What invisible barriers stand between you and your objective? How can you shape the terrain to your advantage? What conditions must exist for victory to become inevitable? Then, like water wearing away stone, begin your work in silence. If knowledge is power, gather it like a miser hoards gold. Study not just your objective, but everything that surrounds it. Learn the patterns, understand the rhythms, see the connections that others miss. If relationships are crucial, cultivate them with the patience of a farmer tending crops. Plant seeds of loyalty, nurture networks of influence. Create alliances that will bear fruit when the moment of action arrives. If resources are needed, accumulate them gradually, invisibly, like a squirrel preparing for winter. But remember, the most valuable resources are often intangible. Trust, information, timing, position. Most importantly, learn to see preparation itself as a form of victory. Every piece of knowledge you gather, every relationship you build, every position you secure, these are not merely steps toward success. They are successes in themselves. The amateur rushes to action. The professional prepares methodically. But the master? The master creates conditions where action becomes almost unnecessary. Remember this: when you step onto your battlefield, whether it's a boardroom, a marketplace, or an actual field of conflict, it should already be yours. Not through force, not through luck, but through the invisible power of preparation. Your preparation begins now. Look at the battles ahead of you. What conditions must you create? What forces must you set in motion? What groundwork must you lay? Start today. Start small, but start with the understanding that every step of preparation is a step toward inevitable victory. The battlefield awaits. Will you shape it, or will it shape you? The greatest general I ever knew lost every battle he fought in his mind. Before his armies ever marched, before his strategies were tested, he had already tasted defeat in the bitter waters of his own doubt. Listen carefully, for what I am about to share with you is the foundation of all victory, the mastery of your mental terrain. Your mind is not merely a tool. It is the first and most crucial battlefield. Every external conflict is first won or lost in the sacred space between your thoughts. Let me tell you of two warriors I once trained. Both were equal in strength, in skill, in dedication to their craft. But their minds were territories as different as desert and forest. The first warrior's mind was like untamed wilderness, thoughts scattered like startled birds, emotions surged like flash floods, fear and doubt lurked in shadows, ready to ambush his confidence at critical moments. Despite his physical prowess, He lost battles to inferior opponents because he could not master the terrain within. The second warrior's mind was like a well-ordered garden. Each thought had its place. Emotions flowed in controlled channels. Fear and doubt were not eliminated. They were understood, contained, and even used as tools of heightened awareness. He went on to become one of my finest generals, not because he was stronger, but because he had mastered his mental terrain. Think of your thoughts as armies moving across vast plains. Some thoughts are scouts, racing ahead to explore possibilities. Others are heavy infantry, grinding through problems with methodical force. Still others are archers, striking from unexpected angles to reveal hidden solutions. But who commands these forces? Who coordinates their movements? Who ensures they serve your ultimate victory rather than scattered skirmishes that drain your strength? Most people are not generals of their minds. They are prisoners of them. They let fears patrol their borders like enemy sentries. They allow doubts to occupy their strongest positions. They surrender their most valuable territories to the chaos of undisciplined thinking. This ends today. To master the terrain of your mind, you must first map it with ruthless honesty. What are your mental strongholds, those beliefs and capabilities that give you strength? Where are your vulnerable passes, the places where doubt and fear can slip through your defenses? What resources does your mental territory contain? Creativity, wisdom, experience. Where are the unexplored regions, potential that remains untapped? What foreign forces occupy your territory, limiting beliefs, unnecessary fears, borrowed opinions? Next, establish your command centers. These are your core principles, your deepest values, your non-negotiable truths. Every thought, every decision, every strategy must flow from these positions of power. But mapping and fortifying are not enough. You must also master the art of mental mobility, the ability to shift your perspective, to redeploy your resources, to adapt your thinking as circumstances change. This is where most fail. They become rigid, fixed. They dig trenches in their minds and refuse to move even when their position becomes untenable. True mental mastery requires fluidity. Like water, your mind must be able to flow around obstacles, to freeze into unshakable determination, or to evaporate and rise above the battlefield entirely for a broader view. Here is your first exercise in mental mastery. For the next 7 days, observe your thoughts like a general observing troop movements. Which thoughts serve your objectives? Which ones undermine your position? Which ones waste your mental resources on meaningless skirmishes? Where do your mental forces need strengthening? Where do they need to be redeployed? Do not judge. Do not resist. Simply observe. Map your mental terrain with the detachment of a strategist planning a campaign. Remember, every external battle is first won or lost in the mind. Master this inner terrain, and no outer obstacle can stand against you. Your mind is your empire. Will you rule it, or will you remain its servant? The choice and the battlefield is yours. There is a delicate art that few ever master: to think with the breadth of a general, while moving with the stealth of a shadow. Today, I will teach you this dual nature of strategic mastery. Most people fail because they embody only one aspect. They either think broadly but act clumsily, or move swiftly but without direction. True power lies in the marriage of these opposites. Let me share with you a story from the northern campaigns. We faced an enemy who had every advantage: superior numbers, better supply lines, stronger defensive positions. Their general was known for his brilliant strategies, his ability to see the entire battlefield, but he had one fatal flaw. His movements were as loud as his thinking was broad. Every action was announced by drums and horns. Every maneuver was accompanied by great displays of force. He thought like a general, yes, but he moved like a thunderstorm. We used his nature against him. While he planned grand strategies, we inserted small, silent forces into key positions. While he moved entire armies with great fanfare, we quietly cut his supply lines with teams of shadow warriors. While he stood on his command hill surveying the battlefield, invisible arrows found the gaps in his defenses. He lost not because his strategy was flawed, but because he failed to understand this essential truth. The grander the strategy, the more subtle its execution must be. Consider the eagle. From high above, it sees the entire landscape, every movement, every pattern, every possibility. Yet when it strikes, it moves with precise, silent efficiency. This is your model. This is your aspiration. To think like a general requires detachment. You must rise above the immediate chaos of the battlefield, see beyond the obvious, understand the hidden connections that shape events. A general does not become emotional about a single skirmish. He does not celebrate small victories or despair over minor setbacks. He maintains the broader vision, always asking, how does this moment serve the larger strategy? But thinking like a general is only half the equation. You must also learn to act like a shadow. What is the nature of a shadow? Study it carefully. It moves without noise. It penetrates without resistance. It influences without force. It cannot be grabbed or fought directly. It changes shape to match the terrain. It grows stronger as light grows brighter. It vanishes when directly confronted. This is how you must execute your strategies, with quiet precision, with fluid adaptability, with the kind of subtle influence that others feel but cannot quite identify. Here is the practical application. When you form your strategies, rise up. See the whole board. Consider all angles. Think in terms of months and years, not days and hours, but when you execute, when you move your pieces and implement your plans, become the shadow. Let your actions be subtle. Let your influence be felt rather than seen. Let your power express itself through position and timing rather than force and friction. Think of the master calligrapher. His mind holds the entire composition, every stroke, every space, every nuance of meaning, yet each movement of his brush is precise, controlled, perfect in its execution. Your challenge for the coming week is this. In every situation you face, practice this dual nature. When planning, rise above the immediate situation. See all possible connections and consequences. Consider multiple futures. Plan for both success and failure. Think in terms of complete campaigns. When acting, move quietly and precisely, influence indirectly. Let your power be felt rather than displayed. Adapt to the terrain. Strike only when success is assured. Remember, the general who moves like a shadow never loses the advantage of surprise. The shadow that thinks like a general never loses its way. Which will you be? The general who cannot execute, the shadow without direction, or will you master both and become truly unstoppable? The choice is yours. But choose wisely, for this decision will shape every battle you fight from this day forward. The greatest victory is not won by the warrior with the sharpest sword, but by the strategist who sees what others cannot. Today, I will teach you to develop the eyes of a master strategist. Let me tell you of a battle that was won by seeing the invisible. My scouts reported an enemy force advancing through the mountain passes, a force 5 times our size. Traditional wisdom said to retreat. Surface analysis suggested defeat was inevitable, but I had trained my eyes to see beyond the obvious. While others saw only the enemy's strength, I saw the storm clouds gathering in the distant peaks. While they counted enemy soldiers, I counted the hours until those clouds would unleash their fury. While they worried about our inferior numbers, I studied how melting snow would affect the mountain paths. 3 days later, the enemy force was decimated, not by our weapons, but by mudslides we had anticipated, not by our strength, but by nature's power that we had foreseen. They saw only the battlefield before them. We saw the forces that would shape it. Most people are blind, not because they cannot see, but because they only see what is directly before them. They react to the present while remaining ignorant of the future taking shape in the shadows of their perception. Consider the master of Shangqi, the game of generals. When an amateur looks at the board, they see pieces. When a professional looks, they see positions. But when a master looks, they see possibilities unfolding, moves yet unmade, strategies yet unnamed, victories yet unclaimed. This is the art of seeing the unseen. It is not mystical. It is not supernatural. It is the natural result of disciplined observation and deep understanding. First, you must learn to see patterns. Everything in life moves in patterns. People follow predictable emotional cycles. Markets move in recurring waves. Opportunities emerge in consistent sequences. Threats develop along familiar paths. Power shifts according to recognizable rhythms. These patterns are the footprints of the future walking toward you. Watch how water flows around rocks in a stream. It doesn't think, it doesn't plan, it follows the path of least resistance. Human nature is similar. Once you understand the terrain and the forces at play, you can anticipate movement before it begins. But seeing patterns is only the beginning. You must also learn to see connections. Everything is connected. Every action creates ripples. Every decision opens some doors while closing others. The master strategist sees these connections not as single lines but as webs of possibility. They understand that pulling one thread can move the entire tapestry. Think of a gardener looking at a seed. The amateur sees only what is, a small, seemingly insignificant object. But the master gardener sees what could be, the entire tree, its fruits, its shade, its impact on the surrounding ecosystem. You must develop the same vision in your strategic thinking. When you look at a situation, train yourself to see the visible elements and their hidden counterparts, the forces at work beneath the surface, the patterns of movement and their likely progression, the web of connections and their potential implications, the seeds of future possibilities and their probable fruits. Here is your practice for mastering strategic sight. When you encounter any situation, freeze it in your mind. Look at it as if it were a photograph. Now ask yourself, what forces brought this moment into being? What patterns are expressing themselves? What possibilities are taking shape? What connections exist that others might miss? What invisible forces are gathering strength? What seeds of future events are being planted now? Remember, the future casts shadows in the present. Learn to read these shadows, and you will never be surprised by what emerges from them. Will you remain blind to these patterns, or will you develop the vision that sees beyond the obvious, beyond the present, beyond the visible? The choice and the future it creates is yours. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. This truth, which I wrote centuries ago, remains the most misunderstood principle of strategy. Let me tell you of a victory that required no bloodshed. Two kingdoms stood on the brink of war. One had mighty armies, vast resources, and an unshakable belief in their own power. The other had only one asset, a general who understood the art of winning without fighting. For months, this general orchestrated a campaign of strategic positioning. He formed alliances with neighboring states. He spread rumors of secret weapons. He positioned troops to threaten vital trade routes. He sent diplomatic messages that played on the enemy king's deepest fears. When the moment of confrontation came, the mighty army never moved. Their king, seeing himself surrounded by invisible threats, chose peace over conflict. A war was won without a single arrow being fired. The masses believed that victory requires conflict. They imagined triumph must be seized through struggle, through force, through direct confrontation. This is the thinking of amateurs, of those who will forever remain pawns in the games of masters. True strategic genius lies not in winning fights, but in making fights unnecessary. Consider these three principles that, when mastered, make victory inevitable. First, position yourself where conflict becomes unnecessary. The master strategist creates situations where opponents choose to yield, because resistance would be foolish, not because it would be difficult. Think of gravity. It doesn't fight to pull objects downward. It simply exists in such a way that downward movement becomes natural, inevitable, chosen. This is how you must position yourself in any contest. Second, shape perception until resistance becomes unthinkable. When your position is perfect, your power obvious, and your victory certain, smart opponents choose not to oppose you. They seek alliance instead of conflict, cooperation instead of competition. Think of the oak tree. It doesn't fight for sunlight. It grows taller, spreads its branches wider, creates shade that makes competition futile. Other plants don't fight the oak. They adapt to live within its influence. Third, control the strategic landscape until victory becomes inevitable. This is not about dominating through force, but about influencing through position. About creating situations where every path except the one you choose leads to disadvantage. This is how the moon controls the tides, not through force but through position, not through struggle but through influence, not through combat but through presence. Here is what you must understand. The fight itself is evidence of strategic failure. Every blow struck, every resource expended, every moment of direct conflict represents a missed opportunity for strategic victory. Let me share with you the 4 questions of strategic positioning. Where can you position yourself so that others naturally flow toward your objectives? What perceptions can you shape that make resistance appear futile? How can you control the landscape so that your desired outcome becomes the path of least resistance? What invisible barriers can you create that guide others toward your preferred solution? Your challenge now is to examine your current battles. Look at every conflict you face, in business, in relationships, in life. Ask yourself, how can I position myself to make resistance undesirable? How can I shape perception to make cooperation the obvious choice? How can I influence the strategic landscape to make my victory inevitable? What can I do to win this battle before it begins? Remember, force is the tool of the impatient, of those who lack strategic depth, of those who have not yet learned to win without fighting. The greatest general is not he who wins 100 battles. The greatest general is he who makes battles. Unnecessary. Will you continue to struggle, to fight, to waste energy on conflict, or will you learn the supreme art of victory without battle? The choice and the energy it saves or wastes is yours. Time is not what you think it is. It is not a river that carries you. It is not a master that controls you. It is a weapon, perhaps the most powerful weapon, in the arsenal of the strategic mind. Let me tell you of a battle where time itself became our greatest ally. We faced an enemy army that was superior in every measurable way. More men, better weapons, stronger positions. But they had one weakness. They thought of time as something fixed, something that moved at a constant pace. I saw it differently. I saw time as clay to be molded, as a force to be shaped to our advantage. For weeks we sent small raids at irregular intervals, sometimes hours apart, sometimes days. We moved our camps at strange times, lit fires in random patterns. Slowly, we disrupted their sense of rhythm, their understanding of time itself. Their commanders could no longer predict our movements. Their soldiers lost sleep, never knowing when we might strike. Their mighty army, ruled by schedules and routines, began to fracture under the strain of temporal uncertainty. When the final battle came, they were exhausted, disoriented, their mighty strength wasted. We struck at the perfect moment, when their guards changed, when their officers took their meals, when their entire army was caught between rhythms. This is your first lesson in temporal mastery, learning to see time not as a constant flow, but as a strategic resource to be manipulated. Most people are slaves to time. They react to its passage. They submit to its pressure. They allow it to dictate their moves. This is the path of the eternal victim. The master strategist reverses this. relationship. They don't serve time. They make time serve them. Here are the 3 principles of temporal mastery. First, control the rhythm. Every situation, every market, every opponent has a natural rhythm. Learn to read it. Then learn to control it. Speed up when others expect slowness. Slow down when they expect speed. Break patterns to create advantage. Think of a skilled boxer. They don't just throw punches. They control the rhythm of the entire fight. They speed up, slow down, break rhythm, create openings through temporal manipulation. Second, master strategic patience. The amateur rushes to action, desperate to make something happen. The master waits for the perfect moment, understanding. That timing transforms ordinary moves into decisive victories. Consider the spider in its web. It doesn't chase its prey. It doesn't waste energy on constant motion. It waits, perfectly still, perfectly patient, until the moment of maximum opportunity arrives. Third, generate and harness momentum. Time has a weight, a force, a momentum that can be accumulated and released. Build it slowly. Release it suddenly. Use patience to create pressure, pressure to create opportunity. This is how waves gather force in the open ocean, slowly, invisibly, building power until they become unstoppable when they finally break upon the shore. Here are the 5 questions of temporal mastery. What is the natural rhythm of this situation? Where can I break predictable patterns? What moments of maximum opportunity are approaching? How can I build momentum without revealing my intention? When is the perfect moment to release accumulated force? Your challenge now is to begin seeing time as a strategic element. In every situation you face, ask yourself, what is the natural rhythm here? How can I control it? Where can I build momentum? When is the perfect moment to strike? How can I make time itself become my ally? Remember, time is not your master unless you choose to be its servant. Learn to control its flow, and you control the outcome of every engagement. Will you remain at the mercy of time's passage, or will you learn to make time itself your most powerful weapon, the choice and the moments? It will master or waste is yours. Predictability is death. The moment your opponent can read your moves, you have already lost. Today, I will teach you the art of strategic ambiguity, how to become as unreadable as the wind, as unpredictable as the seas. Let me tell you of a tale of 2 generals. The first was brilliant, but predictable. His strategies were perfect, his tactics flawless. But he always attacked at dawn, always reinforced his right flank, always protected his supply lines in the same way. The second general was different. Sometimes he attacked at dawn, sometimes at dusk. Sometimes he appeared weak when strong, strong when weak. Sometimes he would advance when pressed, retreat when given space. His patterns were water, ever-changing, impossible to grasp. The first general won many battles but lost the war. The second rarely fought but conquered entire kingdoms. The difference? One was a book easily read. The other was a mystery that could never be solved. Here is the deepest truth of strategy. The mind craves certainty. It desperately seeks patterns, hungers for predictability. This very human trait is your greatest weapon, if you know how to exploit it. Consider these principles of strategic ambiguity. First, create patterns only to break them. Let your opponents think they understand your rhythms. Let them believe they have decoded your strategies. Then, at the crucial moment, shatter their certainty. Think of a master musician. They establish a rhythm, train the listener's ear to expect certain progressions, then create power through unexpected variations. Your strategy must hold the same artistry. Second, maintain multiple possibilities. Never let your actions point to a single conclusion. Every move you make should support at least 3 possible intentions. Let your opponents exhaust themselves. Considering all the possibilities, this is how nature protects its creatures. The tiger's stripes could be hiding anything. The rustling leaves could signal danger or safety. Uncertainty itself becomes a defense. Third, Use strategic misdirection. While your opponents focus on decoding your apparent strategy, your real purpose should remain hidden, like a dagger beneath flowing robes. Let me teach you the 5 tools of strategic ambiguity. False patterns. Create recognizable rhythms in unimportant areas. Let opponents invest in understanding these patterns. Break them only when the stakes are highest. Multiple intentions. Every action should suggest several possible goals. Maintain plausible alternatives to your true objective. Let opponents waste resources preparing for multiple scenarios. Calculated inconsistency. Be consistent in small things to appear predictable. Save your inconsistency for decisive moments. Make your unpredictability itself appear random. Strategic noise. Create activity that obscures your true movements. Use minor actions to hide major preparations. Let your signal be lost and carefully crafted. Noise, adaptive response. Never react the same way twice to similar situations. Keep responses proportional but unpredictable. Let your adaptability become your signature. Here is your practical exercise in strategic ambiguity. For the next week, observe your own patterns. Note where you have become predictable. In your daily routines, in your responses to challenges, in your strategic decisions, in your emotional reactions, in your professional methods, then begin the art of calculated variation. Not random change, but strategic unpredictability. Not chaos, but controlled uncertainty. Remember these questions when planning any strategic move. What pattern does this action suggest? How many different interpretations could it support? What assumptions will my opponents make? How can I preserve multiple possibilities? When should I break the pattern for maximum effect? The amateur strategist seeks to perfect their patterns. The master strategist perfects their unpredictability. Which will you be? The general whose moves can be mapped and predicted, or the strategist whose true intentions remain forever shrouded in mystery? The choice and the advantage it creates or surrenders is yours. The deepest paradox of strategy lies before us today. You must plan as though everything can be controlled, then execute as though no plan survives first contact with reality. Let me tell you of 2 armies I once observed. The first had planned every detail of their campaign, every march, every attack, every contingency mapped out with perfect precision. The second had only broad strokes, clear objectives, understood principles, and warriors trained to adapt. When unexpected storms flooded the valleys, the first army was paralyzed. Their perfect plans became worthless scrolls. The second army flowed like water around obstacles, found new paths, seized opportunities the storms created. This is the heart of what I will teach you today. The art of planning deeply while remaining free from the prison of your plans. Most strategists fail in one of 2 ways. Either they plan too little, leaving themselves at the mercy of circumstances, or they plan too rigidly, becoming slaves to plans that reality has already rendered obsolete. The master strategist walks a narrower path. They plan extensively, seeing 5, 10, 15 moves ahead. They consider every angle, every possibility, every contingency. But then, and this is crucial, they hold these plans as lightly as autumn leaves in the wind. Here are the 5 horizons of strategic planning. The immediate horizon, what lies directly before you. The resources currently available. The immediate obstacles and opportunities. The tactical horizon. The next 3 moves in sequence. The likely responses of opponents. The immediate chain of cause and effect. The operational horizon. The broader campaign structure. The coordination of multiple efforts. The integration of various resources. The strategic horizon. The ultimate objectives. The grand patterns of advantage. The fundamental sources of power. The vision horizon. The world you aim to create. The legacy you intend to leave. The transformation you seek to achieve. But here is the crucial wisdom. Once you have planned across all these horizons, you must learn to hold these plans with perfect looseness. like a master swordsman's grip, firm enough to control the blade, loose enough to adapt instantly. Consider these principles of flexible planning. First, plan in principles, not procedures. Understand the deeper patterns. Focus on why more than how. Let principles guide adaptation. Second, create multiple paths to victory. Never rely on a single approach. Maintain alternative routes to success. Keep options open as long as possible. Third, build strategic redundancy. Have backups for your backups. Create reserves of resources and options. Maintain multiple sources of advantage. Here is your practical framework for strategic planning. Plan extensively. Map all possible moves and counter moves. Consider every significant contingency. Understand all major variables. Identify critical factors. What must go right? What cannot go wrong? What variables control success? Create response. Triggers. What signals change? What requires immediate adaptation? What indicates strategic shift? Maintain strategic freedom. Where can you delay decisions? How can you keep options open? What maintains your flexibility? Your challenge for the week ahead. Create a detailed plan for your most important objective. Map out 5 moves ahead in perfect detail. Consider every contingency and response. Then practice holding these plans loosely. Look for opportunities to adapt and evolve your approach. Remember, the map is not the territory. The plan is not the battle. The strategy is not the victory. Your plan should be as detailed as a master architect's blueprints, but your execution must be as fluid as a river finding its path to the sea. Will you be trapped by your own plans, or will you learn to plan deeply while remaining free? The choice and the adaptability it creates or destroys is yours. The obvious path is the deadliest trap. The expected attack is already defeated. Today, I will teach you the art of strategic surprise, how to strike from angles so unexpected that victory is assured before your opponent realizes they are under attack. Let me tell you of a battle that changed the course of history. A mighty fortress stood atop a mountain, its walls facing the only path up the steep slopes. For generations, armies had tried to take it. All had failed, broken against those impregnable walls. But one general saw what others missed. While his enemies watched the path, he trained his men to climb sheer cliffs. While they fortified against frontal assault, he studied the patterns of mountain storms. While they waited for the traditional attack, he moved his army through terrain considered impossible. On a moonless night during the worst storm of the season, when no commander would dare move troops, his warriors scaled the cliffs behind the fortress. The impregnable stronghold fell without a siege, captured from an angle its defenders had never thought to guard. This is the essence of strategic surprise. Attack not where your opponent is weakest, but where they believe attack is impossible. Consider these 4 dimensions of surprise. Temporal surprise. Strike at unexpected times. Attack during perceived impossibilities. Use nature's rhythms against your opponent. Spatial surprise. Move through impossible terrain. Attack from multiple directions simultaneously. Create angles of approach that defy conventional wisdom. Methodological surprise use weapons. In unprecedented ways, combine techniques that have never been combined. Transform supposed weaknesses into strengths. Psychological surprise. Attack the mind before the body. Strike at beliefs rather than defenses. Undermine assumptions rather than positions. But here is what most fail to understand. True surprise is not about being unpredictable. It is about being so deeply predictable that your opponents build their entire strategy around their predictions, and then striking somewhere entirely different. Let me share with you the 5 principles of strategic surprise. First, make the obvious obvious. Let your opponents see clear patterns. Allow them to believe they understand you. Reinforce their expectations systematically. Second, create blind spots. Identify where your opponents feel safe. Find the angles they consider impossible. Discover the times they believe secure. Third, develop hidden capabilities. Build strength in secret master skills your opponents think you lack. Prepare for impossible approaches. Fourth, layer your deceptions. Make your false patterns seem real. Let your true intentions support your false ones. Create deceptions that reinforce each other. Fifth, strike through the blind spot. Attack with total commitment. Use multiple surprises simultaneously. Never give time for recovery. Here's your practicals. Exercise in strategic surprise. For the next week, analyze your challenges through these questions. Where are your opponents looking? Where have they stopped looking? What do they believe impossible? What capabilities can you develop in secret? Where can you strike that would fundamentally reshape the battle? Remember, the most dangerous attacks are those that your opponent has convinced themselves are impossible. Consider these elements in every strategic situation. The obvious approaches your opponents expect, the defensive preparations they've made, the assumptions that guide their strategy, the blind spots these assumptions create, the opportunities. These blind spots present your challenge is this. In your next significant contest, create such a compelling, obvious strategy that your opponents commit fully to defending against it. Then strike where they least expect, not where they are weakest, but where they believe themselves invincible. Will you continue to attack where your opponents expect? Or will you master the art of strategic surprise? The choice, and the victories it wins or loses, is yours. What appears to be weakness often contains the seeds of invincible strength. Today, I will teach you the art of strategic transformation, how to turn your apparent disadvantages into unstoppable weapons. Let me tell you of a battle where perceived weakness became ultimate strength. My army faced a superior force in open terrain. We were outnumbered, under-equipped, seemingly destined for defeat. The enemy general saw our weakness and grew confident. His soldiers saw our poor equipment and grew bold, but they failed to understand. We had transformed our weakness into strategy itself. Our lack of heavy armor meant we could move twice as fast. Our shortage of weapons meant each warrior had mastered fighting with anything at hand. Our small numbers meant we could hide where larger armies couldn't, strike where heavy forces dared not tread. What the enemy saw as weakness, we had transformed into lethal advantage. When the battle came, their confidence became their downfall. Their superior equipment became a burden in the marshland we chose. Their numbers became a disadvantage in the narrow passes we selected. Here are the 5 principles of turning weakness into warfare. First, embrace your limitations. Understand your constraints completely. Accept them without resistance. Study them until you see their hidden potential. Second, transform disadvantage into difference. Don't try to overcome weakness. Learn to fight differently because of it. Make your limitation your signature. Third, use perceived weakness as camouflage. Let opponents underestimate you. Hide strength behind apparent weakness. Strike when overconfidence blinds them. Fourth, master the art of strategic judo. Use the enemy's strength against them. Make their advantages work in your favor. Transform their momentum into your weapon. Fifth, create strength through adaptation. Develop unique capabilities from your constraints. Build techniques others cannot copy. Make your weakness the source of your power. Consider the bamboo. It seems weak compared to the oak. It bends while others stand rigid, but when the storm comes, the oak breaks while the bamboo survives. Its apparent weakness, its flexibility, is its ultimate strength. Here is the strategic framework for transforming weakness. Identify true nature. What appears to be weakness? What is its essential quality? What unique opportunities does it create? Discover hidden advantages. How can this limitation help you move differently? What does this constraint help you see clearly? Where does this weakness give you unique access? Develop unique methods. What techniques can you create from this limitation? How can you fight in ways others cannot copy? What strategies does this weakness make possible? Create strategic deception. How can you use this weakness to mislead? Where? Can you hide strength behind it? When can you transform it into surprise? Let me share with you the 4 questions of strategic transformation. What do your opponents perceive as your weaknesses? How have you tried to overcome these limitations? What would change if you embraced them instead? How could these very limitations become your signature strength, your practical exercise for the week ahead? Study your supposed weaknesses. For each one, ask, what unique perspective does this give me? What can I do because of this limitation? What opportunities does this create? How can this become my advantage? Remember, the oak fights the storm and breaks. The bamboo bends with the storm and survives. The reed seems weak, yet thrives where stronger plants cannot grow. Your task is not to overcome your weaknesses, but to transform them, not to hide your limitations, but to turn them into weapons your opponents cannot understand or copy. Will you continue trying to overcome your weaknesses, or will you learn the art of turning them into your greatest strengths? The choice and the power it creates or wastes is yours. The lone warrior, no matter how strong, falls before coordinated forces. Today, I will teach you the art of strategic alliance, how to build networks of power that multiply your strength and secure your victories before battles begin. Let me tell you of a kingdom that conquered half the known world without fighting a single major battle. Their armies were modest, their weapons unremarkable, but their ruler was a master of alliances. While others sought to build the strongest army, this ruler built the strongest network. While others trained soldiers, they trained diplomats. While others stockpiled weapons, they stockpiled favors and obligations. When they finally moved to expand their territory, they found doors already open, defenses already weakened, victories already half won through promises, marriages, and carefully cultivated relationships. Here is the first truth of strategic alliance. Loyalty is not given, it is not bought. It is engineered through careful understanding of human nature and strategic necessity. Consider these 5 principles of alliance building. First, understand true interests. Look beyond stated objectives. Identify underlying motivations. Find the real drivers of behavior. Map the hidden networks of influence. Second, create mutual dependency. Make your success essential to others. Become critical to their objectives. Build systems that reward loyalty. Design structures that punish betrayal. Third, maintain strategic distance. Never become fully dependent on any ally. Keep alternative options viable. Preserve your freedom of action. Control the core of your power. Fourth, master the art of reciprocity. Give before you take. Create cycles of obligation. Build momentum through exchange. Make generosity a weapon. Fifth, engineer alliance structures. Design networks, not just connections. Create interlocking relationships. Build redundancy into critical links. Maintain central position in the web. Consider how wolves hunt in packs. Each member has a role. Each contributes to the success of all. But the alpha maintains position through careful balance of strength, generosity, and strategic relationships. Here is your framework for strategic alliance building. Map the power landscape. Who holds real power? What are their true interests? Where are their vulnerabilities? How do they interconnect? Design alliance architecture. What structure serves your objectives? How can relationships reinforce each other? Where do you need redundancy? What position gives you control? Create value propositions. What can you offer each ally? How can you become essential? What unique benefits can you provide? How can you align interests? Build control mechanisms. How will you maintain influence? What ensures continued loyalty? How can you detect early warning signs? What leverage can you maintain? Remember these critical questions when forging alliances. What does each party truly want? What are they afraid of losing? Where do interests naturally align? What could cause them to betray you? How can you make loyalty more profitable than betrayal? Your practical exercise in alliance building. For the next week, Analyze your strategic landscape. Map all potential allies and their interests. Identify areas of natural alignment. Look for opportunities to create value. Design structures that reinforce loyalty. Plan how to maintain central position. Here is the deepest truth. No one is loyal by nature. They are loyal because circumstances, structures, and interests make loyalty the most profitable choice. Your task is not to find loyal allies. It is to create conditions where loyalty to you becomes the obvious strategic choice for those whose support you need. Will you continue to hope for loyalty, or will you learn to engineer it through strategic alliance building? The choice and the network it builds or breaks is yours. The loudest power is the weakest power. True strength moves in silence, strikes without sound, conquers without proclamation. Today, I will teach you how silence itself becomes a weapon in the hands of the master strategist. Let me tell you of two commanders I once observed. The first was renowned for his speeches, his proclamations, his constant communication. His words echoed across battlefields. His orders rang through valleys. His intentions were known to all. The second spoke rarely. When he moved, few knew. When he struck, none expected. When he conquered, many wondered how. The first commander won battles but lost wars. The second conquered kingdoms while others were still preparing speeches. The difference lay not in their capabilities, but in their understanding of strategic silence. Here are the 5 powers of silence. First, the power of mystery. Let them wonder about your capabilities. Never reveal the full extent of your strength. Keep your limits unknown. Let uncertainty magnify your influence. Second, the power of attention. Watch while others speak. Learn while others reveal. Understand while others explain. See what loose tongues expose. Third, the power of timing. Choose when to break silence. Make your words carry weight. Let scarcity create value. Strike when silence has built tension. Fourth, the power of space. Create gaps others fill with assumptions. Let silence draw forth revelation. Make absence speak louder than presence. Let questions remain unanswered. Fifth, the power of restraint. Hold your strongest cards unseen. Keep your best moves unknown. Let your full power remain untested. Save supreme effort for decisive moments. Consider the snow leopard. It does not roar to prove its power. It does not growl to claim territory. It moves in silence, strikes in silence, rules through the power of silent presence. Here is your framework for mastering strategic silence. Audit your communication. Where do you speak unnecessarily? What power do you lose through expression? When does speech weaken your position? How does noise reduce your impact? Identify strategic gaps. Where would silence serve you better? What mysteries could work in your favor? When would questions serve better than answers? How could uncertainty increase your power? Create silent advantage. Build power through perceived potential. Let others imagine your capabilities. Make silence itself become threatening. Use restraint to magnify impact. Master silent timing. Choose moments to break silence. Make words carry maximum weight. Learn when silence speaks loudest. Know when mystery serves. Best, remember these principles of strategic silence. The more you speak, the less your words mean. The more you show, the less they wonder. The more you explain, the less they fear. The more you prove, the less they imagine. Your practical exercise in strategic silence. For the next week, practice the disciplines of silence. Speak half as much as usual. Leave thoughts unexpressed. Let questions go unanswered. Make others wonder and wait. Learn what silence reveals. Here is the deepest truth. Every word you speak, every power you demonstrate, every intention you reveal reduces your strategic options and weakens your ultimate position. True power remains largely unspoken. Ultimate strength stays largely unshown. Final capability remains largely unknown. Even now, in teaching you this, I demonstrate only a fraction of what silence can achieve. The greatest lessons remain unspoken. waiting for you to discover them. In the spaces between these words, will you continue to speak when silence would serve better? To show when mystery would make you stronger? To explain when questions would give you power? Or will you learn to use silence itself as a sword that cuts deeper than any blade of steel? The choice and the power it builds or breaks is yours. The strongest chains are forged not from iron, but from desire. The most effective trap is not one you set, but one your opponent walks into willingly. Today, I will teach you how to turn ambition itself into a weapon. Let me tell you of a battle won by desire rather than steel. A powerful warlord threatened our borders, his army vast, his appetite for conquest insatiable. Direct confrontation would have meant destruction, but we understood something deeper than military strength. We understood his desires. Through careful manipulation, we let him discover secret gold mines near our borders. We allowed rumors of weak defenses to reach his spies. We displayed just enough wealth to ignite his greed, just enough weakness to trigger his confidence. His desire for easy victory drew him into terrain we had prepared. His army, chasing the phantom of quick conquest, found itself trapped in valleys we had spent months preparing. His strength became his prison, his ambition his downfall. Here are the 5 principles of desire-based strategy. First, understand deep desires. Look beyond surface wants. Identify core motivations. Map emotional triggers. Find the dreams that drive. Action second, create irresistible opportunities, design temptations that align with desires. Make the bait too perfect to ignore, build traps that look like chances, present weaknesses that invite attack. Third, let them choose their chains, make them pursue their own imprisonment, let their decisions trap them. Have them build their own cage, make constraint feel like freedom. Fourth, use momentum against them. Let desire create momentum. Direct that force toward your goals, make their enthusiasm their weakness, turn their commitment into constraint. Fifth, close the trap with their own energy. Let their actions seal their fate. Make escape cost more than surrender. Use their investment against them. Make victory feel like their idea. Consider the Venus flytrap. It doesn't chase its prey. It creates an irresistible attraction. The prey chooses to enter. By the time it realizes the truth, its own movements have triggered the trap. Here is your framework for mastering desire-based strategy. Map desire architecture. What do they truly want? What are they afraid of losing? What dreams drive their decisions? What beliefs limit their vision? Design perfect bait. What opportunity seems too good to ignore? What weakness appears too perfect? What chance looks risk-free? What gain seems guaranteed? Create commitment triggers. How can they invest? Themselves? What makes retreat costly? Where does momentum take control? When does desire blind reason? Build hidden constraints. What limits appear after commitment? How does strength become weakness? Where do options quietly vanish? When does victory become defeat? Remember these questions when crafting desire-based strategies. What does your opponent want most? What would they risk to achieve it? How can you make that desire work for you? Where can you place the perfect bait? How can you make the trap feel like opportunity? Your practical exercise in desire manipulation. For the next week, study the desires around you. Notice what drives people's decisions. Observe what makes opportunities irresistible. Watch how commitment changes behavior. Learn how desires blind. Perception. See how ambition becomes constraint. Here is the deepest truth. The strongest trap is one your opponent not only walks into willingly, but one they convince themselves is actually their own brilliant idea. Your task is not to force your opponent's moves. It is to understand their desires so deeply that their own choices lead them exactly where you want them to go. Will you continue trying to force outcomes, or will you learn to make your opponents choose the path you've prepared? The choice, and the power it creates or wastes, is yours. One wasted move is fatal. One moment of distraction can undo years of preparation. Today, I will teach you the art of ruthless focus, how to eliminate everything that does not serve your ultimate victory. Let me tell you of two armies I once observed. Both were equally strong, equally well-trained, equally determined. But one allowed itself 1,000 small distractions, minor skirmishes, petty victories, irrelevant conquests. The other maintained absolute focus on a single objective. Every move, every decision, every resource served that singular purpose. When they finally met in battle, the outcome was inevitable. The first army, though undefeated, in small conflicts, had depleted its strength on meaningless victories. The second, having preserved its power for one decisive moment, achieved total victory. Here are the 5 principles of strategic focus. First, identify the essential, know what truly matters. Recognize decisive objectives. Understand critical paths. See what must be done. Second, eliminate the irrelevant. Cut away false opportunities. Abandon trivial victories. Release unproductive commitments. Clear all mental clutter. Third, concentrate focus resources on key points. Apply maximum power to critical moments. Eliminate divided effort. Create overwhelming advantage. Fourth, maintain strategic clarity. Keep ultimate objectives in view. Test all actions against final goals. Preserve strategic orientation. Resist tactical temptations. Fifth, guard against distraction. Recognize false opportunities. Identify deceptive advantages. Spot resource-draining activities. Detect strategic dead ends. Consider the hunting falcon. It does not chase every bird it sees. It does not waste energy on unimportant movement. When it chooses its prey, everything else ceases to exist. This total focus makes it unstoppable. Here is your framework for achieving ruthless focus. Audit your engagements. What truly serves your objectives? Where is your energy being wasted? Which victories are actually distractions? What can be eliminated? Clarify critical paths. What must be done? What sequence is essential? Where must force be concentrated? When are decisive moments? Identify strategic noise. What looks important but isn't? Where are you being misled? What victories are actually defeats? Which opportunities are traps? Create focus mechanisms. How will you maintain clarity? What systems guard against distraction? How will you test decisions? What keeps you oriented? Remember these questions when evaluating any action. Does this serve the ultimate objective? Is this the best use of resources? Could this energy be better applied? Is this victory worth its cost? Does this move us closer to final triumph? Your practical exercise in strategic focus. For the next week, practice ruthless elimination. Cut one unnecessary activity each day. Abandon one trivial pursuit. Redirect energy to critical objectives. Strengthen one essential capability. Remove one source of distraction. Here is the deepest truth. Your greatest enemy is not external opposition. It is internal dispersion of force. Every divided effort, every wasted move, every unnecessary battle diminishes your power to achieve what truly matters. Most fail not because they lack capability, but because they waste it on 1,000 minor victories while losing sight of ultimate triumph. Your task is not to win every battle. It is to win the battles that matter by refusing to fight the ones that don't. Consider these hard questions. What are you fighting for that doesn't matter? Where are you winning battles but losing? The war? What victories are actually defeating you? What must you sacrifice to achieve what matters most? Will you continue to chase every opportunity, to fight every battle, to waste force on trivial victories? Or will you learn to focus your entire being like the falcon diving for its prey on what truly matters? The choice and the power it preserves or wastes is yours. The greatest danger in strategy is not the enemy's strength. It is your own self-deception. Today I will teach you the art of strategic self-knowledge, how to understand yourself so deeply that no enemy can find a weakness you haven't already mastered. Let me tell you of two generals who faced each other in a battle. The first knew every military text, every tactical formation, every strategic principle. The second knew only one thing with absolute clarity: himself. The first general fought according to perfect theory, but fell into confusion when his plans met reality. The second adapted instantly to every situation because he knew exactly who he was, what he could do, and what he could not. Here are the 5 levels of strategic self-knowledge. First, know your true nature, understand your authentic strengths, accept your genuine limitations, recognize your natural rhythms, see your core patterns. Second, know your hidden weaknesses, find your blind spots, identify your vulnerabilities, understand your triggers, map your failure patterns. Third, know your real capabilities, measure your true capacity, gauge your actual limits. Test your supposed strengths, verify your assumed skills. Fourth, know your strategic identity, understand your natural style, recognize your decision patterns, see your leadership signature. Accept your tactical preferences. Fifth, know your ultimate purpose, clarify your deepest motivations, understand your true objectives, see your essential mission, recognize your core values. Consider the tiger. It does not wish. It could fly like an eagle or swim like a shark. It knows its nature perfectly. This self-knowledge makes it unstoppable within its domain. Here's your framework for developing strategic self-knowledge. Conduct capability audit. What can you truly do? Where do you actually excel? What are your real limits? Where do you consistently fail? Map your strategic patterns. How do you naturally operate? What situations bring out your best? Where do you typically stumble? What environments suit you? Identify core truths. What drives your decisions? Where do your loyalties lie? What values guide you? What goals truly matter? Locate strategic blindness. What do you consistently miss? Where are you self-deceived? What feedback do you ignore? Which warnings do you dismiss? Remember these questions for deep self-examination. What strengths do you falsely claim? What weaknesses do you deny? Where does your confidence exceed your capability? What truths about yourself do you avoid? Which failures do you refuse to learn from? Your practical exercise in strategic self-knowledge. For the next week, study yourself with ruthless honesty. Document your actual performance. Note where reality differs from self-image. Record your decision patterns. Observe your natural reactions. Map your true capabilities. Here is the deepest truth. Most strategic failures come not from what we don't know about the enemy, but from what we refuse to know about ourselves. Every weakness you deny becomes a weapon for your opponents. Every false strength you claim becomes a vulnerability they can exploit. Every blind spot you maintain becomes a path for their attack. Consider these vital questions. What parts of yourself have you never truly examined? Which weaknesses have you tried to hide rather than master? What feedback have you dismissed because it was painful? Where does your self-image differ from reality? Will you continue to operate on comfortable illusions about yourself? To claim strengths you haven't verified? To deny weaknesses you haven't mastered? Or will you develop the kind of deep self-knowledge that makes you truly unstoppable? The choice and the power it creates or surrenders is yours. Hope is not a strategy. Luck is not a resource. Today, I will teach you how to eliminate chance from your path to victory, how to create conditions where success becomes inevitable rather than merely possible. Let me tell you of 2 armies that faced a treacherous mountain crossing. The first general said, "We will hope for good weather." The second general sent scouts to study the mountain patterns for months, learning every sign of approaching storms, mapping every sheltered path. When the storms came, as they always did, the first army was devastated. The second crossed safely, having created their own fortune through meticulous preparation. Here are the 5 principles of eliminating chance. First, map all variables. Identify every factor that affects outcomes. Understand each element's influence. Track all possible variations. See the complete system second. Create redundancy. Build multiple paths to victory, maintain backup resources. Establish alternative methods, secure secondary options. Third, control critical factors, identify decisive elements, secure key variables, manage crucial timing, maintain essential capabilities. Fourth, plan for chaos, prepare for worst cases, build resilient. Systems create adaptive responses, maintain strategic flexibility. Fifth, generate certainty, convert variables to constants, transform chances into choices, make luck irrelevant, create inevitable outcomes. Consider the ant colony. It doesn't hope to survive winter. It doesn't rely on luck for food. It creates systematic certainty through relentless preparation, multiple backup plans, and complete control of critical factors. Here is your framework for eliminating chance. Analyze success factors. What must go right? What can go wrong? What influences outcomes? Where does chance enter? Create control systems. How can you manage variables? What can you make certain? Where can you eliminate risk? How can you secure outcomes? Build redundancy networks. What backups do you need? Where do you need alternatives? How can you multiply options? What insurance must you create? Establish failure protocols. How will you handle problems? What responses are prepared? Where are your safety nets? What recovery systems exist? Remember these questions when eliminating chance. What are you leaving to luck? Where are you hoping rather than ensuring? What variables remain outside your control? Where could chance defeat your plans? What certainty can you create? Your practical exercise in creating certainty. For the next week, eliminate hope from your strategy. Identify every assumption. Convert wishes to plans. Transform chances to systems. Create backup for every critical factor. Build certainty into every outcome. Here is the deepest truth. What appears as luck to others is often the inevitable outcome of thorough preparation meeting opportunity. Most fail not because of bad luck, but because they left too much to chance. They hoped when they should have planned. They wished when they should have prepared. Consider these critical questions. Where are you relying on hope instead of systems? What could destroy your plans if luck turns against you? Where have you accepted chance as unchangeable? What certainty could you create with enough preparation? Your task is not to be luckier than others. It is to make luck irrelevant through systematic preparation and complete control of critical factors. Will you continue to hope for the best, to leave crucial outcomes to chance, to wish for luck when you could create certainty? Or will you learn to build systems so thorough that success becomes inevitable? The choice and the certainty it creates or surrenders is yours. The ultimate victory is not won on any battlefield. It is achieved in the realm of pure strategy, where physical force becomes unnecessary, where mastery of principles makes triumph inevitable. Let me share with you the final tale, the story of a kingdom that achieved total dominance without fighting a single battle. Its rulers had mastered every principle we have discussed. They moved like shadows, planned 5 moves ahead, turned weaknesses into strengths, built perfect alliances, and left nothing to chance. Their enemies found themselves defeated before they knew they were at war. Their rivals became allies before they realized their position had been compromised. Their victories were invisible until they were complete. This is the state of total mastery we have been working toward. Let us bring together all we have learned into a unified philosophy of strategic dominance. Here are the 5 levels of strategic mastery. First, mastery of self-perfect self-knowledge, complete emotional control, absolute strategic clarity, unified purpose, and action. Second, mastery of perception, control of what others see, management of what they believe, direction of what they expect, guidance of what they choose. Third, mastery of position, perfect strategic placement, optimal relationship networks, dominant information flow, superior option generation. Fourth, mastery of action, flawless Timing, perfect force application, precise execution, inevitable outcomes. Fifth, mastery of strategy itself, integration of all principles, synthesis of all methods, transcendence of physical limitations, achievement of strategic invincibility. Consider the highest state of strategic excellence, where every action serves multiple purposes, where every position creates multiple advantages, where every move generates multiple victories, where success becomes systematic rather than occasional. Here is your framework for achieving total mastery. Integrate all principles. How do separate strategies support each other? Where do different methods multiply force? When do various approaches create synergy? What combinations generate overwhelming advantage? Synthesize all methods. Combine indirect and direct approaches. Merge visible and invisible actions. Unite preparation and execution. Fuse planning and adaptation. Transcend limitations. Move beyond physical constraints. Operate above tactical concerns. Function beyond traditional boundaries. Achieve strategic omnipresence. Generate strategic inevitability. Create self-reinforcing advantages. Build momentum generating systems. Establish position-improving cycles. Develop victory-ensuring processes. Remember these questions as you pursue total mastery. How can your strategies support each other? Where can your methods multiply force? What combinations create overwhelming advantage? How can you make victory systematic? When does mastery become complete? Your final exercise in strategic mastery. For the week ahead, begin integrating all principles. Combine multiple strategies in every action. Apply several methods to each objective. Create compound advantages from every position. Build self-reinforcing systems of victory. Develop multiple paths to every goal. Here is the ultimate truth. The highest form of strategic mastery is not about fighting better than others. It is about reaching a state where fighting becomes unnecessary because victory is already assured through superior strategy. Consider these final questions. Where are your strategies still fragmented? What principles remain unintegrated? How can your approaches support each other? When will your mastery become complete? You have learned to move like shadow, to plan deeply while remaining flexible, to see the unseen, to win without fighting, to control time itself. Now your task is to unite these skills into a single, unified art of strategic mastery. Will you continue to apply these principles separately to achieve occasional victories through isolated strategies, or will you reach for the highest level of mastery, where all principles become one, where all methods support each other, where victory becomes not just possible but inevitable? The choice and the mastery it creates or denies is yours.